This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with it?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Who were you talking to?" The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years." Make sure to like for a part 2.
I'm going to be telling you the scary story of the house I lived in elementary and middle school. It was a 3-bedroom house, 1 bedroom in the basement, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. Because I was the oldest, I got put in the bedroom in the basement. Right when we moved in, I already had creepy feelings about the house. I hated being downstairs by myself. One day I dropped a $20 bill behind my dresser. I decided to move my dresser all by myself, and behind the dresser was this door. It wasn't a normal door, it was really short and just squared. It was also glued off, so I couldn't get into it. Me and my neighbor, who were best friends, worked at it for days to get into it. We finally got it open, and inside was another room. It was almost like an underground attic. The walls were wooden, the ceiling was wooden, there was no carpet, but it smelled awful. My parents found out and they were super mad at me for opening the room. They of course put that dresser in front of that door for a reason because they knew I would explore it. But after that, things started to get weird. Stay tuned for part 2.
What happens if you wake up during surgery? In 2008, Donna Penner was booked in for an exploratory laparoscopy at her local hospital. It should have been a routine procedure, but for some reason, the general anesthetic failed. With her body still paralyzed by the anesthetic drugs, Donna was unable to signal that anything was wrong. Over the next 90 minutes, she was forced to feel horrific pain as the doctor made the incisions on her body and moved around her internal organs.
I'm a NASA employee, and here's something you probably didn't know about space. So for the astronauts on the International Space Station, this is what the toilet looks like. But see, the toilet only has about a 4-inch hole, which is much smaller than the toilets on Earth. So the astronauts actually have to go through training, and there's a camera inside of this simulation toilet that hooks up to a monitor in front of them so that they can watch themselves and learn how to properly align themselves on the toilet. So then the worst part is that the trash on the ISS isn't taken out all the time. So when that silver can gets full, they have to put on a rubber glove and kind of shove everything down back in the toilet. But if things escape, they have to go around the ISS and catch floating feces. When the trash is taken out, they launch it towards the atmosphere to burn up. So some shooting stars are actually just astronaut poop.
In 6th grade, I had this really tight friend group. Michaela, Laura, Nina, Roxy, and me. There were 5 of us. And every Friday we had this tradition of throwing big group sleepovers together, making banana bread, and watching a scary movie. And every weekend we would alternate houses. Some Fridays would be at my house, then Laura's house, Michaela's house, Nina's house. The only house we never slept over at was Roxy's house. And we never really asked why, because Roxy was pretty quiet and she just never invited us. And since someone else was always down to host, it was just never really an issue. But then it was the weekend of Roxy's birthday. And we were planning our regular Friday night sleepover, except we were trying to make it special because it was her birthday. So we were all talking about making a special banana bread with frosting, like a banana bread cake. And then Michaela, who was always pretty straight up and blunt, was like, "Well, Roxy, since it's your birthday party, we should really be doing it at your house." And Roxy got really red. She's like, I don't really know if I want to do it at mine. And Michaela's like, "Well, whenever it's one of our birthdays, we do it at our houses. So now it's your turn." And I felt really bad for Roxy because clearly she didn't want to have the sleepover at her house. But Michaela was really aggressive about it and ultimately pressured Roxy into agreeing to having the sleepover at her house, which ended up being a horrible idea.
This is why you should never talk to strangers in an elevator. One day, a surgeon was working the night shift at a hospital. He just finished his operation on a patient and was going to the basement. He entered the elevator and there was one other woman already inside. They were casually chatting when the elevator door opened and another woman was about to enter. But the surgeon looked horrified. He quickly slammed the close button and punched the highest floor of the building. Surprised, the woman asked why he was being so rude and wouldn't let the other woman in the elevator with them. The surgeon explained that in this hospital, hospital, all patients wear white wristbands with their names printed on them, but the red wristbands are placed on all of the corpses. The surgeon then looks to the woman in the elevator with him and says, "That was the same woman I just operated on. She died on the operating table. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman in the elevator with him just smiled, raised her arm, and said, "You mean like this one?"
I asked Google what the most haunted places in my state are, and I came across this bridge in the small town of Avon, Indiana. So I texted my friend and we went to go see what it was all about. Stories say that a woman and her baby were crossing the bridge and tragically fell to their death several hundred feet below, and now haunt those who go under. So I'm gonna go under. According to the legend, if a train is going over the bridge, you can hear the cries of people who fell off it. There's a train going over it right now. Nothing weird has happened, but I just feel uncomfortable. I decided to go further under the bridge, and then this happened. Yo, did you hear that? I legitimately heard something, but we later found out what it was. There was a homeless guy up there. That's what I heard. That terrified me. It doesn't explain why my reader peaked, though. 500,000 likes, and we'll bring a Ouija board here.
Mary was a 5-year-old twin. She just loved playing with her twin sister. They'd just play with their dolls in the dollhouse every day. But the year Mary turned 6, her parents sat her down and said, "It's time we finally told you." They told her that she was a twin, but her twin sister died at birth, and she no longer existed. Mary, frustrated, went straight to her wardrobe, opened it, and said, "Well, who's this then?" She opened the wardrobe door only to see another Mary standing there looking straight at her. Her mum giggled and said, "Sweetie, that's your reflection in the mirror." Mary slowly closed the wardrobe door, and the little girl in the mirror stepped forward and said, "Shh, don't tell them. They just won't understand."
Alright guys, crazy story time. So I was at Dollar Tree recently, just before filming this video. I was near the cash register looking at nail polish, and all of a sudden I start hearing people arguing. At first I thought they were joking, but then I looked over and realized that they were actually getting confrontational. There was a short little guy and a tall guy and a gal. I immediately knew something was gonna go down. After some shouting, the girl took the guy and escorted him out of the store. Employees were yelling at them to get out as well. At this point, I noticed that there's 2 or 3 individuals holding the door shut. And I thought to myself, oh no, something's gonna go down. Mind you, there's a lot of kids and elderly folks in the store. At this point, I know that I need to move to the emergency exits towards the back. And so did a lot of other people. Kids were definitely scared and screaming, and all of a sudden I hear, "He has a gun." Someone else said he had a stick. We didn't take any chances though, and we all went to the back. And I kid you not, we were scared shitless. Okay, part 2 coming.
Medical surgery's gone wrong, part 1. Imagine you're supposed to be asleep during surgery, but you're actually awake and can't move. This is what happened to Katrina Ossity. It's called anesthesia awareness, and this happens to people sometimes during surgery. Katrina went in to go get a tumor removed. When they put her under anesthesia, she realized she was awake still, but couldn't move or talk. She said she could feel the incisions, the smell of her skin being burnt while they were doing surgery. She said it hurt and felt really uncomfortable, and she couldn't do anything about it. She would try to scream and warn them, but her body wouldn't move. She said she felt like a helpless meat sack of organs. It's honestly a nightmare. Kinda makes you scared to go in for surgery. Like this video if you want more of this series. I'll do a part 2.